A defining season is finally here. Next on Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
This is no time for that. In the pocket and a sack. Tim Jamison.
Brady gets terrific. Throws it. Get it. Touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace, and welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. Finally, the season has arrived. The long wait is over. Michigan opens up the 2019 campaign against Middle Tennessee State on Saturday night. We'll break it down and look ahead at some of the big storylines for the team coming out of camp, answer the questions you've left us at WolverineDigest.com. That's coming up in the next segment with Brandon Brown and Michael Spath of Wolverine Digest, as well as WTKA in Ann Arbor. We've got this week's question of the week, Twitter poll results, etc. still to come. But first, let's sort of set the stage for what's at stake here in 2019. You know, Michigan is a very difficult program to cover and to analyze. And I think that's why, just to try to give some people the benefit of the doubt, that's why it's prone to being hot taked a lot. Here's why. On one hand, we have a program that since Jim Harbaugh took over is in the top 10 in all of college football in both wins and winning percentage. And given where the program was the day before he took over, where we had barely averaged 7 wins a season the decade before he arrived, I think all of us would have said, hey, absolutely, under the first 4 years of Coach Harbaugh with what he's got to dig out from and everything else, if we go into year 5 and he's, got a top 10 overall record in college football, we'll take it. But then that gives us the other hand. Somehow, and this is hard to do, Michigan has compiled one of the top 10 records and winning percentages in college football over the last 4 years without winning a damn thing. That's hard to do. It is hard to win this many games and accomplish like nothing of significance at the exact same time. To not win a New Year's Six bowl game, to not make the playoff, to not win your conference, to not even make the conference championship game, to not beat your biggest rival. Somehow, Michigan has failed to check every single one of those boxes, despite having what is clearly one of the top 10 programs in the country under Jim Harbaugh. And I think that's one of the reasons, aside from there's just a lot of hacks in this industry, I think that's one of the reasons Michigan is more prone to hot takes than other programs. How do you quantify success? I mean, there's a lot of wins on that resume, but there's not a lot of significance. And I think that's what makes this season so key. Because this is the year we find out Were they reasons or were they excuses? Was Urban Meyer a reason that Michigan couldn't get to where it ultimately wanted to go, or was he an excuse? Was a so-called antiquated offense a reason that Michigan couldn't take the next step, or an excuse for whatever was holding us back? These are the final two boxes to check. Urban Meyer is gone, replaced by a man with no head coaching experience at all, and no, I don't count 3 games as an interim coach when everybody knows the other guy's coming back. And now you've got a brand spanking new offense that everyone is raving about, including Coach Harbaugh. So with those obstacles out of the way, if Michigan doesn't get it done this season, what will be the reason/excuse then? That's why a lot is riding on 2019. This is the year we get some defining answers. And that's why this will be a defining season, for better or for worse. And like all of you, I'm hoping it's for better. You can tell the season is nigh because we're upping the ante where the content is concerned on our Patreon page as well. I've already got some week 0 and week 1 early lines I played earlier this year, with an opportunity for you, if you're one of our subscribers, to look at those lines and see how they've adjusted. We've opened up a brand new sports book here in Des Moines, Iowa, where I live, and you've gotten a chance to see the first game that or set of games that I've played at our sports book there as well. We'll be giving you exclusive post-game podcasts, instant reactions to every Michigan game on our Patreon page as well, if you're a part of our $5 a month exclusive club. And that's where you get access to all of our content. And for $25 a month, you get all of that content as well, but you'll get your name or your business in the credits and a shout out on the show. If you want to support us here at Michigan Podcast, go to patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. That's patreon.com/Michigan Podcast. Back here on Michigan Podcast, joined by my partners at Wolverine Digest, Michael Spath and Brandon Brown, also of WTKA in Ann Arbor. Gentlemen, go blue. It's time for game week. Are you guys ready to go?
I couldn't be more ready. I mean, honestly, Brandon and I were talking about it today. We've been talking about it all week. I mean, you had a little bit of taste of it in week 0 with that Miami-Florida game and Arizona-Hawaii, and now we're waiting for Michigan, and it can't come too soon, man. Just dying for the longest off season in any of the sports, major sports. Please, for the love of God, let it be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday already.
I'm guessing that you concur with that, Brandon?
I do, yeah. I was talking to Mike just before we started the call. I texted him, I'm like, good God, can we just get these games here already? No shot. I'm not taking a shot at Will Hart, but when they give us a punter for 16 minutes at media availability, that means we're ready to talk about some games, for God's sake.
That means they're officially out of things to talk about. So we've got 5 questions from the audience. We're going to get to those in a minute, but I want to start with one from me. Jim Harbaugh yesterday had his first press avail of game week press avail of the season. Is there anything you guys learned yesterday or very late in camp that stood out to you that you think our audience needs to highlight? Brandon, I'll start with you.
Not really. Michael and I talked about this yesterday when we were trying to think of an idea for the website for Wolverine Digest, and I guess it was kind of noteworthy that he confirmed that Andrew Stuber tore his ACL and is indeed out for the season. I mean, we had heard that he was pretty injured and that he was going to miss significant time, but obviously that means he's done for the year. That's unfortunate for him as he was battling for the right tackle starting spot. And then Jim Harbaugh was pretty open about the fact that he's pretty impressed with a lot of freshmen earlier, that he thinks somewhere between 12 and 14 are going to play this year, which sounds like a pretty high number on a team that doesn't have a ton of glaring holes. It's a lot more than played last year. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who those young guys are that make an impact. But that's about it. I mean, again, kind of more evidence that we're ready to talk about a game. What about you, Michael?
Well, I think the Stuber news is fairly significant, honestly, because for this reason, last year we saw Juwan Bushell-Beatty get banged up late in the year. While injuries can happen at any point during the season, the wear and tear on football players as you go along I mean, look what Michigan last year against Ohio State. Rashawn Gary was out. Devin Bush was out. David Long was out. Chase Winovich was banged up in the bowl game. Kwity got banged up in the bowl game. The longer you go, the more that you put the stress on your body, and that's where it's really important to have depth. And even though Andrew Stuber was, the reports were that he was going to miss a significant amount of time, maybe there's a little bit of hope that he could be back for mid-October, for November. And if he was able to, then you're in a better position if you suffer an injury, if someone hurt either at tackle where he can play or at guard and Runyon can slide inside. And so it kind of gives Michigan, I don't want to say a razor-thin margin for error at the offensive line, because there are guys like Steven Spinellis on the inside that they feel good about. They feel good about Chuck Filiaga. Ryan Hayes, a redshirt freshman, someone that's on the rise. But they really don't have any experience depth whatsoever. And so if they have one injury along that offensive line this year, they're suddenly playing somebody that's probably out of their depth. And that's significant to me. The freshmen, 12 to 14 guys. I mean, if you have 14 guys that don't redshirt, this is what I was looking at earlier. If you have 14 guys that don't redshirt, then you have 16 guys that redshirted a year ago, then you would have in that sophomore class in 2020, you would have 30 players. And that is a really big number to have. And how would that, over the next couple of years, that's a big portion of your team. 30 kids in one class is, better than a third of all your scholarship players. And so how will that impact Michigan in future seasons if they do end up playing 14 true freshmen this year?
All right, good stuff, guys. Let's get to the questions from the audience. We've got 5 of them that we think kind of touch on a lot of the major themes riding on or could be the determining factors for the 2019 season. Here's the very first question we're going to throw your way. Go Blue 24 wants to know, would you rather Michigan lose to Ohio State but win the Big Ten and make the college football playoff, or beat Ohio State but fail to do either one of those things? And this is probably in response to Pat Forty at Yahoo News predicting Michigan to go 9-3, but finally beat Ohio State. So how would you guys answer that question? Michael, I'll start this one with you.
Putting my fan hat on here, which I wear 50% of the time. You know what? At the end of the day, a Big Ten title and a college football playoff berth, in my opinion, trumps anything. I don't want to lose to Ohio State again. I would absolutely loathe losing to the Buckeyes for the 5th time in the Jim Harbaugh era, for the whatever this is, the 8th year in a row overall. The fact that Ryan Day, you would give him so much momentum going forward and establish maybe a little bit of a narrative that not only can Harbaugh not beat Urban Meyer, but he just can't beat Ohio State, and Ryan Day is the next the next guy to slay the Wolverines. So that would drive me crazy, but that would be negated if Michigan was in Indianapolis, won the Big Ten, and somehow they still made it to the college football playoff. And I tell you what, under your scenario, if that happens, is it possible that they're playing Ohio State in the college football playoff? At least the Buckeyes are there. So I think at the end of the day, I mean, you want to play for a national championship. And so if you're telling me that they're in the playoff and they can play for a national championship, that trumps beating Ohio State.
Brandon?
I think it's an easy answer, too. I mean, getting farther, putting some trophies in the trophy case, winning the Big Ten, playing for all the marbles, is what every team wants to do. I mean, Michael made a lot of good points. Going 0-5, Jim Harbaugh going 0-5 against Ohio State, not awesome. Continuing that streak of just not being able to beat them, giving Ryan Day a launch pad to better recruiting and more success, and just business as usual essentially. But being able to finally play in Indianapolis, bring home a Big Ten title, and then put yourself in a position to play for a national championship it's just bigger. It's just bigger. I mean, I know a lot of Michigan fans hate the idea of not beating Ohio State again, but when you have a chance to play on that stage for it all, that's got to be the answer.
I'll say this, the story with Urban Meyer and Zach and Courtney Smith last year, it really distilled a lot of my fervor for the rivalry. So at this point, for me, on a personal level, Ohio State's just what is standing in Michigan's way of winning a Big Ten championship and getting to the college football playoff. The rivalry thing doesn't really matter to me as much as it did most of my life. I just want to beat them because they're standing in the way. So if we can get where we want to go without having to beat them, as long as we're at the destination we all would like to get to, that's probably where I would come down on that question. Let's get to the next one from one of our readers at Wolverine Digest. Poker Stars wants to know, what position can we least afford an injury early in the season? He says, I think it's cornerback or O-line, but wanted your thoughts because there are always injuries and even a bigger risk playing Army and their cut blocks. Brandon, you get this first this time. Go ahead.
Well, I think the Army game is a good reference point here because I think it's defensive tackle. I think they're already thin there, already counting on a couple of true freshmen in Mozzie Smith and Christopher Hinton to provide some depth and potentially play a lot. I mean, we'll see how that looks under Sean Nua and Don Brown and how often they want to rotate guys in and out of there. But Michael Dwumfor hasn't been 100% healthy. Carlo Kemp isn't exactly a 330-pound nose guard in there. And Donovan Jeter's never really played. So, I mean, when you start to think about who they have available already at full strength, it's not the best position to be in. So I think it's definitely defensive tackle. I mean, we talked a little bit about O-line, and they've got some guys back there that they feel pretty good about. There's not even a guy to feel good about, really, with the defensive tackle spot. There's just isn't a lot of bodies there. So I think it's D-tackle, but I do think there's a couple other positions that are a little unproven, but you still have a little bit of wiggle room.
Michael?
I think that's a great point on the defensive tackle. I'm going to go cornerback. I agree with the question from one of the Wolverine Digest members. Because of this, if you lose Vincent Gray, first of all, if you lose Lavert Hill, then your number one cornerback is a redshirt freshman who has yet to play in a football game at Michigan, and that would be obviously huge to a huge loss for the Wolverines because the success of Don Brown's defense has been this aggressive man-to-man, in-your-face play at the cornerback position, going from Jordan Lewis to David Long and Lavert Hill, and now Lavert Hill, and hopefully mentoring Vincent Gray in that mode. If you lose Vincent Gray instead of Lavert Hill, well, either way, your next man up right now, it sounds like, is Jalen Kelly-Powell. Jalen Kelly-Powell is in his third year out of Cass Tech, and in his first two seasons at Michigan, he's played cornerback, he's played safety, he's played the Viper position. So this is a man who has not really had a position yet at Michigan. Is that because I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's trying to figure out where the guy fits best, but it's also he's just kind of a tweener. He's not quite physical enough to play safety. He's not quite big enough to play Viper, and he's probably not quick enough and athletic enough to play cornerback. And so if that's your first man in as your third corner, if one of those guys were to go down, that's concerning in my book.
Question number 3 from our readers at Wolverine Digest, looking ahead to the 2019 season. Keith wants to know, if we get past Michigan State with a perfect record intact, do you think we will make it to the playoffs? Let me put a finer point on that. Do you think, what do you think Michigan in the Big Ten has to do to have its champion be in the college football playoff for the first time since, 2015? I think was the last time the Big Ten champion was in the college football playoff. 2016, the Big Ten champ, Penn State didn't make it. 2017, Ohio State didn't make it, the Big Ten champ, last year's Big Ten champ. So let me put a finer point on that question. What do you think Michigan has to do as a Big Ten champion to make the college football playoff?
I can start. As a Big Ten champion,
yep.
I think Michigan has to probably have one loss or less, and ideally to Notre Dame out of conference. Because I think if you create a scenario where earlier someone asked if it's okay if you were to lose to Ohio State but make the college football playoff, I don't know how that really works. I don't know how Michigan gets in. If Ohio State beats Michigan, then Ohio State's going to have to lose 2 games, and Michigan's going to have to go undefeated in that stretch. So when I look at it, I think Michigan can afford one loss during the regular season, if that is to Notre Dame, if that is to Michigan State, if that is to Penn State, and still, if they beat Ohio State and qualify for the Big Ten championship, and they win, I still think they're going to the college football playoff. It starts getting tricky if you say, like, well, if they lose to Ohio State and that's their only loss of the season, but they still make it in. Well, I don't think they do if Ohio State is the Big Ten champion. I just don't know that the conference will have enough respect, and there's enough other teams that go bad during the season that the Big Ten gets 2 Big Ten teams in. So, yeah, I think they've got to beat Ohio State. They've got to have 1 loss or fewer to make it to the college football playoff.
Brandon?
I think Michael pretty much explained every scenario. I don't know how Michigan can get in. That loss to Ohio State, if that is Michigan's only loss and somehow Ohio State has 2 losses at that point, Michigan can still go on to play in the Big Ten title. That loss is just so late in the year, and while I don't know if that should matter as much as it seems to, it does. It matters. When you lose, your game seems to matter. If you lose earlier in the season and have a chance to rebuild your resume for the rest of the year, you seem to be able to climb up the rankings and who's playing the best right now, and the eyeball test and all the stuff that the committee talks about, I think is all factored in. And so, losing a game to Notre Dame in October or losing a game to Michigan State earlier in the year, Penn State, like Michael suggested, I think you can recover from that. I just don't know if you can recover from a loss to Ohio State in late November, especially if that is the proverbial ticket to get to Indianapolis. So, I mean, man, it almost sounds like Michigan has to win every game to get in, and that is just a tall, tall order.
Our fourth.
Think about this, too. If they lose to Ohio State, and say that's the only loss on their schedule, and somehow they still get in the Big Ten championship game, if you're the college football playoff committee and you say, well, the best team that Michigan faced this year, Ohio State, ranked number 3 in the country, is the one they lost to. All the other teams that they beat, Notre Dame, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Penn State, Iowa, those are all probably top 25 wins. But if none of them are top 10 wins, then you say, well, sure, they were a very good team this year, but they couldn't beat the best of the best. I think it's just too much to overcome if they don't beat the Buckeyes.
That's just it, too. That's part of the equation that's a problem. If Michigan loses to Ohio State but somehow still gets to the Big Ten championship game, that means Ohio State has 2 losses at least and won't be ranked that high. They won't be number 3 in the country or number 5 or even in the top 10 probably. So there's really just one route, or maybe 2, I guess. Win every single game and make it there, or lose 1 earlier in the season and hope that they can climb back up high enough to make it into the top 4.
Yeah, I think it's an impossible question to answer because there's no rhyme or reason to how the committee has done what they have done since 2014. And there's one guarantee. If you're an Alabama team coached by Nick Saban and you have you have 1 or fewer losses, you're getting in, regardless of the rest of your resume. That's 2 years ago, they got in over a Big Ten champion Ohio State. They had no wins over ranked teams. So in their last game against Auburn, they got housed. So I think that's the only, and then they went on and won the national championship, so they earned it when they got in. So I think we have no idea. There's no precedent guiding us here. They're kind of making this up whole cloth, almost on a season by season, and sometimes they're reverse engineering on a week to week basis. Let's get to the fourth question from our readers at Wolverine Digest. Uper wants to know, I believe Michigan / Harbaugh is fighting an uphill battle with SEC cheaters, OSU having different admissions, and them just willing to do whatever to win football games. Is it fair to just be happy with what Harbaugh is doing on and off the field? The type of student athletes he's bringing in and the way he leads our program. I believe him when he says it's hard to beat the cheaters. Harbaugh will take the program to the epitome of where it can go, but the question is, where is that? Brandon, I'll start with you this time.
I don't think it is okay to be happy with what's going on so far. Not when you pay a coach the top 3 or 4 salaries in the country. You don't bring a coach in like that to not compete with all of those teams, regardless of whatever people think is going on and how perfectly squeaky clean they think Michigan is or isn't. It's just I get tired of that argument. I really do. I mean, Jim Harbaugh said what he said about it's hard to beat the cheaters, and that's fine. It's time to put up or shut up. I mean, that sounds pretty harsh, I think, but that's how I feel. Michigan has enough talent, I think, to play with just about anybody on any given day if you can scheme it and coach it the right way. And hopefully that's what we'll see this fall with a new offense and Don Brown doing his thing. So I just get tired of that argument. I really do. Whenever people want to say, well, it's the cheating or it's this or it's that, I'm over that, man. I mean, I just want them to win and win big. I mean, and I think that's the kind of money he's being paid. He's being paid to coach that way.
Michael, I'm going to guess you agree with pretty much every word of that.
That you don't pay a coach $9 million to just graduate student athletes. I mean, look, hey, that's a great mission, and that's at the core of what the college athlete experience is supposed to all be about. And on that end, Jim Harbaugh is batting an A. He's taken his guys to France and to Italy and to South Africa, and he's an ambassador for him. And he wants these guys to get a real experience in Michigan and to get a degree. And that is really incredible. That's awesome that he does that. But, I mean, this is college football, and you're paid to win football games, and you're paid to compete for championships. And, you know, Penn State won a Big Ten title a couple years ago, and if you think that they are, you know, a cheater, I mean, I don't know. I don't think they're out there paying players and ducking the rules and going through all the gray areas. I don't think Michigan State winning the Big Ten title twice under Mark D'Antonio that they're recruiting. They're cheating on recruiting. I don't think Wisconsin has cheated on recruiting. I don't think Notre Dame has cheated on recruiting. I don't think Northwestern winning the Big Ten West a year ago has cheated. I don't think Washington, who was in a college football playoff, is cheating. I don't think Stanford is cheating. There's a lot of schools that aren't cheating. And even if some of them are, even if the SEC, even if Alabama and Clemson and, you know, some of the programs are cheating, well, guess what? If you have great coaching and you can develop talent and you are able to recruit high-level talent too, you should be able to overcome all those things. I mean, the 24/7 Sports team composite rankings came out yesterday, and Michigan is ranked in the top 10 in all 5 of Jim Harbaugh's era. And Clemson has ranked right around where Michigan is. And if Clemson's a rampant cheater, well, they're not doing it well enough because they don't rank number 1 in the recruiting rankings every single year. They rank somewhere between, 5, 10, 15, and they're finding a way to get the job done. And so I think that's an excuse that people use when your team is underperforming and not living up to expectations. You just say, like, hey, we can't compete with the best of the best. Well, if you can't compete with the best of the best, what's really the point? I mean, just I don't know. I wouldn't pay the guy $9 million just to graduate as student athletes and take them overseas.
Final question for Brandon Brown and Michael Spath of Wolverine Digest and WTKA in Ann Arbor. Gigs70 says, how big of a step back do you expect the defense to take? Still top 10, top 20, or worse? And if I could go first on this one, I think what has largely gone unsaid this offseason is there's been all this focus on what adjustments Don Brown has to make after the way last season ended. There's been who's going to step in for Chase Winovich, Rashawn Gary, David Long, and especially Devin Bush. But I think people are forgetting that even if you brought every single one of those guys back, and all of them but Chase had eligibility, if you bring the other 4 guys back, there's no way this defense wasn't going to take a step back. And it's because of the offense. I mean, you're going to play an offense where you're going to be on the field 75 to 85 snaps a game. That means the defense is going to be on the field 20 to 30 more snaps than they're accustomed to. There's going to be higher stress situations. Michael, you have noted that I think it was only Notre Dame had a top 10 national defense of all the playoff teams last year. And it wasn't that Alabama and Clemson lacked talent on defense. It's just when A, you're blowing teams out, and B, both of those teams played an up-tempo style of offense a year ago. That's just simply going to tax your defense by definition. So I think there needs to be more acknowledged that regardless of personnel losses, there's no way this was going to be a top 3 defense when you're playing a much more explosive up-tempo offense. And I'll kind of hand it off to you guys from there. Michael, you can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I really don't know the answer to that question yet. I mean, it's the person asking what we think. But I don't know, because I don't know how much this offense is going to change things for the defense. You make some great points, Steve, about being out there for 20 more plays. Well, unless you go 7 more 3 and outs, you're gonna give up some yards. You're gonna give up some big plays. You're gonna give up some more points. I still expect Michigan to be a top 25 defense.
I agree.
think if they're a top 25 defense and they're a top 25 offense or a top 20 offense, that's the perfect balance in college football. I mean, when you look at Clemson, you look at Alabama, and you look at Notre Dame, and you look at, I think Georgia's been up there. I think Oklahoma's the one exception where they have a top 5 offense and their defense is kind of a little bit lower. But, yeah, top 25 on both sides, and you're going to have a chance to compete for a college football playoff berth. That's what it takes nowadays. You don't need to have a number 1 and a number 40. That doesn't really work. You got to have balance, and I think that's what Michigan's striving for this season.
Well said. Brandon, you get the last word. Go ahead.
Can I just cop out and say I don't really care? I mean, I really don't. I don't care where they rank. I mean, what does it look like? Are they keeping teams out of the end zone when they need to?
Exactly.
Are they forcing turnovers?
Yep.
Are they making explosive plays? Are they giving up explosive plays? I think those are more important questions to ask rather than, are they giving up this many yards, or where do they rank nationally in total defense? And then again, how does the offense look, and are they scoring enough points? I was talking to Jerry DiNardo in Chicago for the Big Ten Media Days, and he referenced Michigan State when I asked him. I asked him a very similar question to this. I said, what is Don Brown going to do? He obviously didn't look very well prepared against Ohio State, and then you can point at a number of things in the Florida game, but they still gave up 40-plus points in that game. And he said, well, take a look at Michigan State. They had the number 1 defense in the country, and what did it get them? The number 1 defense in the country and a 7-6 record and nothing of any significance. So I think Michael's dead on when he says there has to be some sort of balance. Your offense has to score points. Your offense has to have explosive plays. Your defense has to have timely plays and not give up a million points a game or yards a game like an Oklahoma defense. And even though they do, they still manage to win just about every game because their offense is that good. This is just the era of today's college football. It's more about offense and scoring points than it is about defense. So if you can find some semblance of a balance of both, you're going to have the best all-around team.
That's very well said. Both of you, great job. Thanks for being with us again this week on Michigan Podcast. Game week is here, gentlemen. Enjoy week 1, and we will talk to you next week. All right, go Blue.
Thanks a lot.
Well, as you just heard, we're very excited about the addition of Brandon Brown to our website at WolverineDigest.com. He has been a fixture covering Michigan football, particularly recruiting, but team-based stuff as well for the last several years for the Wolverine. And now he will be doing the same for us here at WolverineDigest.com, beginning with focusing on covering both Michigan football and men's basketball. Then he'll be branching out from there. And we've already upped the content ante quite a bit, but it's about to get a massive turbo injection here from the likes of Brandon Brown. So we're very excited that Brandon is joining us here at Wolverine Digest. That's a great place for you to keep up with everything we do all week long in between episodes here at Michigan Podcast. Just go to WolverineDigest.com. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you what one word best describes your opinion on the state of Michigan football heading into the 2019 season. And it looks like we picked 3 pretty good options because opinions on this were pretty divided. Nervous. Nervous ended up barely winning with 38% of the vote, followed closely by impatient at 32%, and confident was next at 30%. And I think that schizophrenic result, I think it is a good snapshot of the schizophrenic mindset of the Michigan fan base right now. There is a lot to like about where we are as a program and where it seems like we're headed. We're just wondering how long it's going to take to get there, right? And then you start wondering if it takes so long to get there, are we ever going to arrive? Let's get to this week's question of the week from Paul, who writes, how come Big Ten Network never mentioned Michigan in its East Division preview? Well, Paul, I actually had an interaction with Jerry DiNardo from the Big Ten Network about this, and then I saw a follow-up interaction he had with a member of the media that covers another team who was discussing a similar point with him. And it basically comes down to Michigan didn't let, in their view, Michigan didn't let them see anything at practice that they thought gave them enough information to make an educated opinion, and they didn't want to make anything up. So they didn't say anything. And that also, therefore, explains why Michigan was never specifically referenced in their preview of the East Division at the exact same time. So there you go. Michigan's obtuseness with media exposure remains, and that's kind of just been a constant around here for as long as I can remember. Well, the games are now here. The offseason is over. The narratives are done. Now we start getting actual results. Make sure you keep up with all of our coverage at WolverineDigest.com, and we give you our instant thoughts. If you follow me on Twitter, at Michigan Podcast, please like and subscribe, whichever the case may be, based on whether you watch on YouTube or listen on the podcast platform that you prefer. The more likes, subscribes, 5-star reviews we get, the more the algorithms like us and help us to find more Michigan fans like you. And that's where you come in as well. Please, I hear from people all the time, man, why aren't more people listening and watching this? It's really good. Well, you can help us with that. Let all the Michigan fans you know about Michigan Podcast. And we also want to thank our friends at Detroit Sports Podcast for helping to spread the word about what we do here each week as well. Until the next time, with the season underway, go Blue.